Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. There's been a lot of talk in recent weeks about what a second Trump administration will mean for US-China relations and the Chinese economy. But even before the US election, major companies were already accelerating plans to move production out of China. According to a new Bain & Company survey of 166 CEOs and COOs, the percentage of businesses relocating operations out of China has risen significantly, from 55% in 2022 to 69% in 2024. The report finds that the Indian subcontinent is the leading destination for these companies, with 39% of executives targeting the region. Other popular destinations included the US or Canada, 16%, Southeast Asia, 11%, Western Europe, 10%, and Latin America, 8%. Companies are also increasingly reshoring production to their home countries or nearshoring to nearby countries. The survey, conducted in July of this year, showed that 81% of executives plan to bring supply chains closer to their markets in 2024, up from 63% in 2022. And why are these companies relocating? Regular viewers will not be surprised to hear that the two leading causes are, of course, geopolitics and economics. The Bain report shows that this shift away from China has been fueled primarily by geopolitical risks and increasing costs. For US companies, which made up 39% of the survey, the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act has also encouraged reshoring. Geopolitical tension is the topmost concern for members of the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai too, according to the group's chair, Alan Gabor, in a recent interview. While President Biden has maintained Trump's tariffs on China and restricted US investment there, Trump has promised even higher tariffs if re-elected. This could deepen challenges for the Chinese economy, which is already struggling with real estate, debt issues, and deflation. As we discussed last week, foreign investment in China continues to decline, falling by $13 billion in the first 9 months of this year, despite Beijing's growing revival efforts. This graph, which we are looking at here, is rather shocking. Speaking at Hong Kong's third annual Global Leaders Investment Summit this week, Vice Premier He Lifeng emphasized the health of the Chinese economy and its openness to foreign investors. This speech was followed by a panel with the head of the National Financial Regulatory Administration, China Securities Regulatory Commission Chairman, and the Deputy Governor of the People's Bank of China. All three underscored China will continue with its financial reforms and use Hong Kong as a bridge to global markets. However, global investors concerned about geopolitical tensions, pessimism about the world's second largest economy, and now the prospect of a full economic war with the US under a second Trump administration, so far are not taking the bait. Next up, the EU is debating how to respond to reports that a PRC company is manufacturing armed drones in the western Xinjiang province for export to Russia to use in the Ukraine war. Hong Kong-based The South China Morning Post writes that the European Union has, quote, conclusive evidence, end quote, that armed drones are being produced for the Russian military in China's western Xinjiang region and has demanded answers from Beijing. This is according to several diplomatic sources. EU foreign ministers discussed the intelligence at a meeting in Brussels on Monday, yesterday, with some of the bloc's 27 member states calling for serious consequences for what would be considered a major uptick in China's support for Russia's military. While it is unclear at this stage whether Beijing is aware of these operations, it would be very difficult to conduct this sort of business, especially in Xinjiang with its heightened security situation, with Beijing not knowing. The fact that the company is based in Xinjiang itself, a region long concerning for Europeans due to allegations of serious human rights abuses, including accusations of crimes against humanity and genocide, all allegations Beijing strongly denies, represents an especially potent gut punch for the EU. At the Monday meeting, the German foreign minister warned that China's growing assistance to Russia for its war in Ukraine, quote, will and must have consequences, end quote. The Dutch Minister of Foreign Affairs said that NATO views China as a, quote, decisive enabler, end quote, of Russia in its war against Ukraine. Quote, I raised this twice with the Chinese Foreign Minister, Wang Yi, and I think as Europeans we should all do this. because this is something that China should be realizing. It is directly affecting European security." End quote. Soon after the EU meeting, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian denied these accusations, stating, quote, "We have never provided lethal weapons to any party of the conflict and strictly controlled the export of military and dual-use drones in accordance with laws and regulations." End quote. Meanwhile, according to assessments made by some group of 20 nations who are meeting this week in Brazil, North Korea may deploy as many as 100,000 troops in Russia's war on Ukraine. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz told Russian leader Vladimir Putin Friday in a rare phone call that the deployment of North Korean forces was a, quote, "grave escalation," end quote, of the war in the region. Scholz plans to raise this topic with China's General Secretary Xi Jinping today, Tuesday, at their meeting in Rio de Janeiro. The German official told media today that the North Korean deployment shows the war is becoming globalized, and Scholz and Xi will need to discuss this new dimension of the conflict. This conflict does continue to grow, and with North Korean presence in the region suggests that Northeast Asia is being drawn into a European conflict. We will continue to follow this China dynamic and Asian angle of the conflict in Europe as we move into 2025. Now we have one more update to cover, but just quickly, if you're getting some value from today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button. Sharing and subscribing are all big helps. It tells the algorithm that this is a channel worth showing to new people. It's the only way in which it can grow. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description for those who want to go the extra mile and help me keep China Update financially sustainable. I rely primarily on your support to keep going, and this is a tremendous help. Thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Let's continue. Finally for today, a Bloomberg intelligence report published yesterday has concluded that China's population is expected to shrink by 51 million, more than the size of California, over the next decade as policymakers struggle to reverse the country's falling birth rate. A Bloomberg Intelligence senior industry analyst, Ada Lee, estimates that by 2035, the population is expected to drop to 1.36 billion, levels not seen since 2012, down from a peak of 1.41 billion in 2021. This is based on the government's own data as well. Other demographers argue that the situation may be even worse, with one demographer saying China faces demographic catastrophe. China is approaching a significant population challenge, of course, with the UN predicting its population could be cut in half by 2100, that is, by the end of the century. This crisis stems from decades of restrictive family planning policies, rising cost of living, and evolving social attitudes, all of which have contributed to a decline in childbirth rates. A shrinking workforce and a growing elderly population are straining the economy, pension systems, and healthcare infrastructure. Beijing has already overhauled its childbirth policies, abandoning the one-child rule in 2016 in favor of a two-child policy, and later encouraging families to have 3 children in 2021. Local governments have introduced measures to encourage childbirth, including financial incentives, extended parental leave, and direct outreach to women about fertility, which we have examined in previous videos. But to date, these policies are having little to no effect. Top leadership know they face this crisis too. In the latest issue of Jiu, the top party theory journal leads with an excerpt of Xi Jinping's speech in May of 2023 at the first meeting of the Central Financial and Economic Affairs Commission. The title of this piece is Supporting Chinese-Style Modernization with High-Quality Population Development. In the piece, she says that, quote, population decline will have some adverse effects on development, such as reducing the labor force and weakening consumption and investment momentum. At the same time, population decline also has some positive effects, such as reducing pressure on resources and the environment and forcing economic development to shift from extensive to intensive growth. Overall, the impact of population decline on economic and social development has both advantages and disadvantages. We should not only look at one side, some issues need to be viewed in the long term, and we should not rush to conclusions. We must oppose both population determinism and population irrelevance, and work to maximize benefits and minimize harms. End quote. Xi Jinping is basically telling his officials, don't freak out. But of course, these are concerning trends. In the next 2 decades, the number of deaths is expected to double the number of births. By then, the old age dependency ratio could reach 52%, meaning that there would only be 2 working age people for every individual over 65. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a wonderful Tuesday, and I will see you all for another episode of China Update tomorrow.